Hi everyone, Sayer G here. I am so honored to be here with Dr. Buttar, whose work has been extremely compelling and relevant, especially now. And I just want people to know a little bit about his work because, in this day and age, it's so hard to find people that have the whole spectrum of knowledge, compassion, and fearlessness. And Dr. Buttar, what I've seen you do just in the past few weeks has blown my mind because your fearlessness, your ability to step out and tell the truth about what's going on has been so encouraging and inspiring. And, as some of us have been following, you've been on London Real. I think some of your videos have actually been banned, which, if anything, is a point of validation in this day and age. But I want people to know a little bit about you. And one of the things that struck me immediately is you're an osteopathic physician. And every time I see osteopath, it just, there's so many good osteopaths out there. It's just it's an immediate validating sign. And then you also have the Center for Advanced Medicine, which your advocacy overlaps so well with what we work on at Greenman Info in terms of just combining environmental medicine with spirituality and with really getting to the root cause of issues. One of the things that you have worked on producing for people to help them is your 9 steps to optimal health. And also, I love that you reference medical philosophy and really focusing on learning, healing, and teaching, which is what we do at Greenman Info. We provide a lot of research and support for people so they can make informed decisions. So we got this call together because there's a lot of overlap in what we're doing, and I just really want to get your message and your work out to as many people as possible, and maybe we can provide some real context for what's going on, which I think in this day and age, we're all looking for that because there's a lot of suffering, but if we can understand what it's really about and what we can do about it, then it takes on meaning and we can really, feel empowered. So thank you for having this call.
Thank you, sir. And since we decided that we were going to use this call as an introduction for my base as well to your work, and I've referenced Green Med Info in many articles and many, when I'm presenting, I've referenced, and I didn't even know that Green Med Info was you, but I never put the two and two together. So I appreciate all the work that you've done, and if anything says Green Med Info, it's in my world, it's already been vetted, it's already factual, and I don't have to worry about going through and making sure that it's been well referenced. In fact, it's always well referenced. So it's made my life a lot easier to do what I do, which is to educate a lot of my patients. And a lot of times patients of mine will bring us the information that they read on Green Med Info. So for my base, they already know who you are probably, but okay. I appreciate the opportunity to actually be on a call with you. And when we talked about this about a week ago, we weren't really sure whether we were going to do this as a live call or what we were going to exactly even do. I think we decided that about 5 minutes ago before we started recording. Yeah. But the interesting thing is the call to action and what you already doing and what we're doing, and they're both absolutely, it's like the right leg and the left leg together. And it makes absolute sense to give people an actionable item that they can do so that they don't feel helpless and as if they're caught in the wind and they're just a consequence. I want them to feel empowered that they actually have the ability to make the difference, to make the change, as we say in the IADFW, make the change the world's waiting for. The IADFW is the International Association for a Disease-Free World, and it's kind of like our little tribe that is growing rapidly now. But the goal is to make that change, and that's exactly what you guys are doing. And so I'm just thrilled that there's an ability for us to come together to show our mutual audiences what they can do to empower themselves, utilizing what you've already created and what we've created, because it's going down the same path. It's like a right flank and a left flank, and it's necessary for people to know. So I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And what I love about your work and who you are is that you're willing to go out there and just, tell the truth about what's happening. Because I sometimes do a little bit of hesitation because I feel like it's too much. My base is going to get upset. And honestly, in the past month, there's been so many instances where by just reporting, for example, on inflated death statistics early on, we had just dozens of people get really upset and be like, wow, you must be pro-Trump, and I can't believe you're questioning this. You know, it's so dangerous what you're doing. And I think, you know, you've encouraged me to be even more honest about what's happening, because I think people can handle it. So I sort of would love to get your, you know, sort of bird's eye view on what's happening right now. And so we can help to educate people on the context that I think they really need to understand why they're locked in their homes, for example, or why they're out of work.
Well, Sarah, you know, it's interesting that you brought this up about the Trump component and how people have said that. And, you know, let's get one thing straight. I've gotten a lot of accolades for being brave and stepping out. And guys, I wish I could accept those things, but I can't really accept those compliments. My motivation is very different. One, I made a pact with the Creator, and that pact was give me back my son, and I'll do whatever it takes. I'll never stop doing your work. And that's really all I'm doing. That's part of it. And the other part is that I have children, and, you know, especially my two sons, and I have a daughter and two sons, and all my children. My daughter is older now. My sons are younger. I mean, not younger, but one's 15, one's 21. And I want to have grandchildren, and I want them to have children. And if this agenda, which I do not believe 99.9% of my body feels that we have already won, but if the opposition, if you will, if the Gates, Fauci, and their puppet masters and whoever's above them, whoever's below them, if their agenda were to occur to win, we would not have grandchildren. In fact, I believe that something, Sarah, that you weren't aware of because you didn't see that bonus broadcast that TTAV did, but I'll just kind of give you a little synopsis.
Please.
Dr. Tempany and Dr. Mikowitz and I had discussed some of the aspects about the vaccinations, but then Bobby Kennedy shared with us something that was so, I didn't even know this, it was so alarming. The plan right now is that the company that's going to get the contract for the manufacturing of the virus, for the vaccine for this virus, is a company that was on the brink of bankruptcy, was pulled out of bankruptcy by Gates. It starts with an M, Moldalvo. Modalvo, is it?
I think it's Moderna.
Moderna. Okay, Moderna. Sorry. See, like I said, I don't play in those fields.
It's okay. There's 120 different COVID vaccines in development, so you're forgiven because this is insane.
Right. So this particular company was on the brink of bankruptcy. They've never produced a vaccine before. They are bypassing all animal studies on this vaccine. All animal studies. It is an RNA vaccine that has never been developed before. And so for the audience to understand this, RNA is what makes up our DNA. And RNA basically incorporates into the DNA. This is how viruses are basically fragments of DNA and RNA. So when people are talking about living, dying, you know, the viruses, what kills the virus, these viruses are not really alive or dead. They're just fragments of DNA and of RNA. So what happens is if they made an RNA vaccine, it will incorporate back into our DNA, and it will literally rewrite our genetic code. Okay, to understand the implications of this, I mean, obviously, I know you do, Sarah, but for the people that are listening, the implications are that generationally, it will literally change what humans are. It will change the definition of what humans are. To the point that Del Bigtree brought up, that the study that they're planning on doing with this group of volunteers, they're not allowed to have sexual intercourse. They're concerned that if a child is reproduced by two people or by a person that's gotten this RNA vaccine, that child, that offspring, will be mutated to a point that would create great disturbance among the researchers that are doing the research. And then one of the scientists that's at Moderna, if that's the right one, I think it is, it starts with an M, the person, this particular researcher, it was a long article that I believe was on CNN that Bobby mentioned, and you can go back and watch the bonus TTAV video and see this. But at the end, you know, nobody reads all these articles, as Bobby mentioned, but at the end, they don't read all the way through it, at least. At the end of it, they had a quote from this researcher that works at this manufacturing facility. And the exact words, I don't remember, but they were something to the extent that I will never receive this vaccine, or I will never let my kids have this vaccine. Wow. So This is the level of deceit and deception that's going on. And the implications on the human race are so dire, and we don't even understand fully yet what they're planning on doing. But I can tell you this, if the vaccine comes out and people take it,
Yeah.
people will die. And it will be attributed to the virus, to the COVID-19, to the second phase, whatever they're saying. It's not going to be that, guys. It's going to be a combination of the toxicity that's already on board from the chemtrails, the combustion of fossil fuels, the outgassing from the incinerators burning, chemtrails, all this component. It's going to be from the actual introduction of this vaccine with all sorts of other immunosuppressives and adjuvants and DNA fragments and RNA fragments from other species and all sorts of mutated human cell lines, etc. And it's going to be the third leg to the stool is the technology that's being rolled out right now that we could say, but if we said it, Sarah, you know, and I know that this will get censored, and our goal is to get this information out to as many people. So we will say that we'll call it the technology, the new technology, and doesn't start with the number 4 and it doesn't end with the letter F. It's a different number and letter, but it's that technology that is actually going to cause a disruption on the entire physiological system of any living being. I don't know how it's going to impact plants, but I'm pretty sure it's going to impact plants the same way. But for the physiological, not just human physiology, animal physiology, for the mammalian physiology, it will impact to a great extent how the body works. We know for a fact that it already creates a disassociation between iron and hemoglobin, or disassociation of iron from hemoglobin, and causes this altitude type sickness, this hypoxic type injury. We know that it affects the voltage-gated calcium channels, allowing for an efflux of calcium into the cell. And intracellular calcium increase is consistent with apoptosis, which again, we know is the definition of cancer. A suppression of apoptosis and an increase in uncontrolled cellular proliferation is pathognomonic for the oncogenic process. And in fact, the studies have been done to show at 1.8 gigahertz, which is 1.8 billion hertz, we end up having all sorts of different cancers, cardiac cancers, adrenal cancers, neurological cancers, neurological implications. And then if you go back and look at what is our phone running at right now, it's at 900 hertz. And we're not even talking about the 5 millimeter component of this, but we're just talking about the radio frequency electromagnetic radiation that's emitted. And remember, when this technology is fully rolled out, it's going to be at 30 to 300 gigahertz, which is 30 billion to 300 billion hertz. So it's unbelievable what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, this is such an amazing influx of just sheer data about what's happening right this moment. I want people to better understand just how profound, the topic is you brought up. So with the evolution of vaccines, we go back to when they used cells, right? Whole cells, they called them attenuated. They tried to weaken them, inject them into people, produce the illness, hopefully a less fatal version. Then they realized, okay, like in the case of polio vaccines, the number one cause of polio was the vaccine. So in the United States, so they went to the capsid surface antigen form, where you're not putting an actual living virus, as if there is such a thing, really into the body. Then they moved to this whole DNA RNA vaccine agenda, which is to really alter, the structure and function of the most fundamental proteins in our species, which are the protein coding genes. So what we're talking about is transhumanism fundamentally. And it's not to say we're talking about aliens, etc., but we have to basically acknowledge that when we're using RNA interference technology, which is what these vaccines are primarily based on, although there is a DNA vaccine as well, we're altering the DNA. And like you said, those changes can be passed on to progeny. It's even unethical for them to do these without warning those participants. So, it's not conspiracy theory any longer that this agenda is a direct violation of basic religious, fundamental religious principles. So, they're going after, the First Amendment. So I would love for you to talk more about how this ties into, the sort of constitutional basis for us standing up for our rights, and, what you think about that.
Well, I think this is a systemic erosion of our rights, and this has been planned. It's been orchestrated from at least the 1990s. And if you start looking at from a historical perspective, what's happened with the 9/11, and some people may not understand fully what's.
I would love for you to go into that if you want to connect it
to the 9/11 thing.
I mean, I'm open because I've done enough research with thermite and all the things of building number 7. And I feel like this has been called the second, 9/11 for a reason. Even the mainstream was referencing this as a 9/11 event, the grounding, all the airplanes and everything that's following. So I'm open to it. I think that maybe people are ready for the red pill.
Well, Sarah, if you think they're ready, then I'll talk a little bit about that. And I know that you've got a lot of information on that too. And yesterday I had a conversation with a very interesting person who is tied in with the celebrity community. In fact, we're going to be doing a live day after tomorrow, I believe.
Oh, great.
And he shared certain information with me because he was in the British military and what some of the things that he saw. But this all comes down to really this technology we're talking about, what we're using instead of the actual term, what we're referring to very affectionately as a 4F system, this new technology is coming down the pipeline. It really comes down to when people talk about bioweapons and they talk about, what's going to happen. This really does come down to the bioweapon issue, but it's not because it in itself is a bioweapon. It's because the bioweapons that they're going to be using needs to be running on a higher level, like the technology from 3G and 4G is not sufficient. That's why they had to go to this next level so that they could actually operate the biotechnology, the bioweapons, I'm sorry. Okay. And so when we come back to looking at what's happening, and I can go through so many strange things about the 9/11 aspect, and there've been books written about this, and there've been documentaries done about this, and they've interviewed some of the top engineers on the planet that said that there's no way that those towers came down on their own. We have case after case, thousands of cases of people being called before this occurred on Monday night, because 9/11 took place on a Tuesday. And at any given time after 8 a.m., those towers had 25,000 people respectively in each of those towers. But when actually it occurred, I think there was only like 10,000 or 15,000 people in both towers. And so they were way below capacity, even though there was no holiday, but there were thousands of cases of people being called and said, don't go to work today. And
right.
Why? And so we don't really understand why that was, but of course we know why, because there were people that were they knew it was going to happen.
Real quick, can I just draw a parallel? There's been a lot of people on the sort of QAnon space that have said all these CEOs have, basically resigned. And instead of looking at it as some grand conspiracy to free a bunch of trafficked children under the ground, how about they knew the pandemic was going to happen? They knew an economic demolition was happening. They took their stock options and they ran. Just like with 9/11, right? A lot of the same patterns have recurred. So for folks who don't know what we're talking about, just go Google, World Trade Center, building number 7, or go watch a documentary like Loose Change, and you'll find out that it's absurd to think that a building that never got hit by a plane had a free fall, demolition event. And then you go deeper down the rabbit hole, you'll see. So the point, though, I bring this up because right now we're seeing what looks like an architected, premeditated, planned demolition of, our socioeconomic infrastructure, although it's global, as well as the suspension of all civil liberties. So I'm just curious, what you think about that and how it relates to, what's going on.
Well, I think that going back when you talk about 9/11, the airline industry got shorted the day before, massive short positions that were historically never, ever has there been any airline that's had that many shorts placed on it. And the date of expirations of those options was only a month out. So right. Somebody knew, and it was planned. Now, here's the thing. Before people start, going off the deep end and saying, how can you say that, Dr. Buttar? Say, what are you crazy for, Before they start saying this, let's look at the facts. Here are the facts. 1, all of the hijackers were of what ethnicity? Do you know what ethnicity they were?
Middle Eastern, right?
They were Middle Eastern, but do you know from which country?
Saudi Arabia.
They were from Saudi Arabia, correct. And Saudi Arabia, as you know, is an ally. We also know that the Saudi Arabians will, they'll, like what we just saw with recently with the Washington journalist that was killed, their regard for human life is somewhat different. So they will come up and they will basically kill somebody or dismember them in a I mean, this has already been shown now in an embassy without much regard. Now, it's not that far-fetched to think that these 12 Saudis basically were like kamikazes. They were told that their families were going to be taken care of, and you just go do this. Now, I don't know. I have firsthand knowledge of this. I'm just asking the question: is that possible? Well, here's the reason I asked this question. All 12 of those people were trained in Florida on a CIA airfield. They all were taught how to fly on a CIA operational field in the state of Florida, all 12.
Right.
Now, I want to there's so many things we can talk about here,
I
but
know.
the books and the documentaries, I think, do way better job explaining the details than Sarah, than you or I could ever do. So I would, like you said, I would recommend to people to go do their own homework. But here are the two things that I haven't heard people talk about. And we know that the one plane that was missing for about 25 minutes, they were afraid that it was going to hit the White House, and ended up, supposedly hitting the Pentagon or whatever the case was. But let's talk about the facts. Okay, these are the facts. There is no footage showing that plane that supposedly hit the Pentagon.
Right.
All those cameras were taken down rapidly. There were FBI agents everywhere taking down those cameras. That's one. Second, the fuselage, the wingspan of the plane would have caused much more destruction than that particular damage that was done. It was a missile that had to hit that part of the Pentagon.
Right.
Now, what I learned just recently and what I knew, I served with the 5th Special Forces Group when I was in the military.
Okay.
5th Group covers Northern Africa and the Middle East.
Yeah.
And there was a report that had been planned on being released, I believe either the September 11th or September 12th, that was basically a report of an investigation, if you will, or counterinsurgence operation, if you will, to understand what was going on with Hamas and Al Qaeda and some of these other Muslim extremist groups. And the report was going to disclose that this was an entire operation from the Mossad, that they had gone into Palestine and revved up the rebels, revved up the natives, incited them, the people that were disgruntled, that were angry, incited them, fueled them, organized them, and then let what nature will typically do, create the problem, and then Hamas and Al Qaeda began. So they basically formulated, and this is a normal operational thing that happens. This is what the special forces are designed for. This is what Green Berets do. This is what you got the Rangers that go in, do the job, and come out. But the SF, the Special Operations Command, which is there's certain different units in the military. In the Army branch of that, it's called SF, Special Forces. That's what our goal is. We go back in, we live with the resistant forces, the guerrilla warfare. We teach them things. It's propaganda. We teach them better forms of hygiene. We teach them better forms of agriculture. We teach them why America is good and why their oppressors in that country or whatever that nation is, why they're bad, and how we help support that insurgency. We help to support the discontent, and we become friends. We help them so that they think now America is good, so that our interests, the United States interests, are at the forefront. So this is the way that guerrilla warfare works, okay? That's one reason when you see SF guys, you rarely see anybody SF nowadays, and unless it's in formation, wearing the Green Beret. Why? Because we've grown out our beards, we've got the turbans on, we've got everything. We live just like the natives. Nobody even knows the difference. You have to be proficient in the languages. You have to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
And my point is that if you start looking back historically, what happened with 9/11, these are just some things that I haven't heard people talk about, but these are the common questions that anybody can answer. You ask anybody in the military, especially in the Air Force, what is a SAC unit? Do you know what a SAC unit is, Sarah?
I don't.
Okay. SAC is an acronym that stands for Strategic Air Command.
Oh.
And the Strategic Air Commands are positioned all throughout the continental United States in a very strategic manner. That's why the strategic word in the Strategic Air Command. They're strategically located so that if there is an alert that goes off and they scramble a fighter, they call them, scramble meaning get them alerted. They will have these fighter jets, which they call interceptors. They will intercept within 60 seconds, covering the entire U.S. airspace in no less than 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
60 seconds. From the time that the alert goes off, or from the time the planes take off, you scramble them, in 60 seconds, they will intercept. So there is no U.S. airspace that is not coverable within 60 seconds of an alert going off, where there will be fighter jets that intercept each other. Now in other words, this one SAC unit and the other SAC unit, they're not going to be that close enough, but the airspace will be covered because those interceptors will cross.
Yeah.
Right? They'll hit whatever, Mach 3, Mach 4, whatever it is, boom, they'll hit it and it's covered. Now, you're telling me that almost 20 years ago, where we had these units established, and they've been established for many years before then, that all of a sudden they lost one of these so-called commercial airliners for 25 minutes and didn't know where this commercial airliner was when they could have intercepted this at any point? That
Right.
is ludicrous garbage BS.
Right.
My friends that were active duty at that time, because
Yeah.
I was in active duty at that point, I was watching it occurring on the news, and my friend called me, my lab partner called me, and he was prior Army as well. And he's watching it, and he says to me on the phone, he says, well, this isn't the first time
Hmm.
that something like this happened. I said, what are you talking about? He said, it's not the first time that a nation has fired on its own people.
Like
I said,
Gulf of
crazy. What are
Tonkin.
you talking about?
Oh
People
my
firing
God.
on its own people. And
Wow.
his words, this is 19 years
He
ago.
knew. He knew.
He
Yeah.
said, you wait. And if you look back in history, World War I, World War II, different nations used justification to enter those world wars
Okay.
by firing on their own people.
That's it. So for people listening, so what we're talking about is basically a viral false flag has occurred, and this is the precedent. And in fact, if you want more data, I would search for what the World Bank issued, which are pandemic bonds, which actually about $500 million went into basically hedging against a coronavirus pandemic that would kill a certain amount of people, which now it has happened. So it's another example of how you said, certain people hedged, with airlines before 9/11. So, I know this is hard for a lot of people to listen to because I don't think they're aware, like we are, of all the research that's accumulated in 20 years on what actually happened in 9/11. But if the people, so many people knew that this was what happened, the Patriot Act is a good example. It suspended our Constitution, basically. So what we're experiencing now is just another sort of like step up from what already was established. And that's why I think people need to go back in history if they don't really fully understand what's happening right now.
Absolutely. That's one reason they say that history repeats itself. And if we want to prevent something from happening, we need to go back and look at the historical precedents, because that's, history repeats itself. And here's one of the things I saw, an interesting Instagram post from some celebrity, and I was blown away by it, because she says we spent 3 times as much money or 2 times as much money investigating Bill Clinton's, and then she basically spelled out, the sex act, the oral sex act.
Yeah.
And then we did to investigate 9/11 commission. So she basically knew about what had happened with 9/11. And many people know because they've watched the videos that have been taken down, they've read the books. But here's the last thing that I'm going to say about 9/11.
Yeah.
Some of my friends that were active duty at that time, 2 specific ones, they told me that they told me to watch the video of President Bush when 9/11 was announced.
Yeah.
Now, he was reading a children's book to a group of elementary students.
Totally.
And somebody whispered in his ear. He heard it. I think it was 8 minutes more before he got up to leave. So he knew what was going on. And I'm certain that all the presidents have always known. But what's interesting is that the alert went out throughout the entire military, U.S. Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, everybody was alerted. And my friend that was in military intelligence said that as soon as the alert came out, they were told, stand down, this is only a drill. It was like right afterwards, the alerts went off, stand down, this is only a drill. Stand down, this is only a drill. Stand down, this is only a drill. This was just repeated.
Wow.
Now, it wasn't a drill. It was pre-planned. The people that orchestrated this were people that were trained in the U.S. They were military CIA operatives, U.S. trained from a country that's an ally of ours. And one other thing that I just want to mention, if you go all the way back to 1987, in 1987, or 1983, sorry, maybe it was 1983, Iran-Contra affairs. And I mean, I was in high school or college at the time, and I remember them interviewing during the congressional hearings. One of the people that was either being interviewed or that was testifying, I don't remember whether he was formally testifying or they were just interviewing him. That was Colonel Oliver North, and he's often on the mainstream media now when they talk to him about, from a consultant basis. It's interesting though, he looks exactly the same he did back then, so he's well preserved. But one of the things they said to him, they said, one of the senators that was asking him a question said, do you believe or do you agree with the statement that Gaddafi is the most dangerous man on the planet? And Colonel Oliver North responded, no, Senator, I do not. And the senator was surprised. They all looked at each other like, well, what do you mean? Gaddafi's not the most dangerous man? Which, by the way, is an interesting topic. Let's come back to Gaddafi in a second. But they were surprised that Gaddafi wasn't the most dangerous man. And then they said, well, who do you think is the most dangerous man? This is in the 1980s, okay? And I apologize. It's either 83 or 87. I cannot remember. I graduated from high school in 83. I graduated from college in 87. So I'm trying to remember. I knew it was during one of those graduation years. So I think it was 1987. And then Colonel Oliver North responded with who he thought was the most dangerous man. Do you know who he said was the most dangerous man on the planet at that time?
I do not.
An obscure name, Osama bin Laden.
Oh.
Now, why is Osama bin Laden so dangerous? And people don't understand, especially in the Western world, people don't understand why Osama bin Laden was so dangerous. Let me tell you why he was so dangerous. One, he was extremely, extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy. One of the wealthiest families on the planet. Beyond reproach, was not corruptible by money. That's one thing that made him so dangerous. Second, he was a very principled man. Okay? He was willing to give up his entire wealth and to go fight jihad, which is the holy war, to help his brethren from a different country fight the oppressors. Who were the oppressors? Afghanistan, Russia. Russia was in Afghanistan at that time. If you remember the Rambo movies that were made with, how Russia was the oppressing nation that was occupying Afghanistan. At that time, in the 1980s, Russia occupied Afghanistan.
Yes.
So Osama bin Laden left Saudi Arabia, left his wealth to help fight the jihad against the Afghanis, against the Russians for the Afghanis. That's why he went there. Do you know who was supporting Osama bin Laden?
The CIA?
The US, the CIA, right?
Yeah.
We were helping, just like we do normally, because they were the guerrillas. So Osama bin Laden was trained, his people were trained by the CIA. They were trained by the US. Yeah. Now, when Russia decided, okay, enough is enough, we can't deal with these guerrillas, we can't deal with this warfare, we've lost too much, and we're getting the heck out, and they exited, who replaced them? The US, right? And so to somebody who's principled and not corruptible, like Osama bin Laden, he didn't care. To him, the oppressors just changed. They changed the colors. From Russia, it became the US. And that's why he then turned against the US, because he was there to free the Afghani people. That's why Osama bin Laden was the most dangerous man, according to Colonel Oliver North in the 1980s. And one last point I want to bring up about that is that when 9/11 occurred, they showed Osama bin Laden addressing what happened. Now, they said, the newscasts say, that he was celebrating and he said, whatever they said he said. Unfortunately, anybody who knows Arabic can hear what he's saying. And what he said was, I don't know who did this.
Wow.
But I'm glad that they did it.
Right?
Yet they blamed it on Osama bin Laden. Now, this guy didn't care. He would have taken, if he'd done it, he would have taken credit for it.
Yeah, sure.
But he said clearly, I don't know who did it, but I'm glad that they did it. And yet we blamed it on him. Used him as a scapegoat, right? This 9/11 thing. Why? Because we know who did it. We know who did 9/11. We can leave that again, let people discover that for themselves. But one other thing about this 9/11 aspect that comes back to Gaddafi. If everybody generally thought that Gaddafi was the most dangerous man, then Sarah, tell me this: why was it that every single year he would come to New York, to the United Nations, and address the United Nations, and yet we never did anything about it? We didn't take him out. He landed in the airport. Never. Nobody ever did anything.
He wanted to get off the U.S. fiat reserve currency, right? Gold standard.
When he did that, he was at the United Nations, and he addressed the African nations and said, why are we still slaves to the petrodollar?
Yes.
And he was talking about going onto a world reserve currency that was backed by gold.
Yes. Yes.
He threatened the U.S. status of the world's reserve currency. And the following couple of months later is when we invaded Libya and took Libya out. All right. But all the years before that, being the most dangerous man identified by the Senate in the 1980s congressional hearings, the Iran-Contra affairs, there are people asking, he's the most dangerous man. Nobody did anything every time he came to the United Nations. It wasn't until he threatened the petrodollar.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I see some parallel in the sense that the Rockefeller Foundation just eschewed their oil holdings, and the fact that, data, surveillance around data has eclipsed oil as the most valuable resource. And this operation that's being run arguably to implode fiat currencies around the world, the US primarily, is to roll in a central bank backed digital currency, as well as all the surveillance apparatus that we're seeing now unfold. And Bill Gates is speaking about digital certificates to prove immunity and quantum dot tracking with vaccination. I really feel like that's what we're seeing, global governance ascending, sort of apotheosis of this system, and the sudden relativization of the United States and being treated almost like a third world, the way that we've participated in dehumanizing and co-opting other global powers over the years. So I see that happening right now, unfortunately.
I completely agree with you. And the information right now that we have is only going to increase. There's more and more people coming out, more and more people becoming aware, more information that's coming to fruition. But I personally want to use this as an opportunity to put a message out there. I know that you've created an organization and helping to get people to be able to act, to take action, because sometimes when people are in a place like this, they feel vulnerable, they feel susceptible, they feel scared. And for them to have some tangible action that they can take is a necessary step. So you've created something. We're about to launch what we were going to do, which is a petition. It's not as actively involved as what you're doing, which I love, and that's one reason I wanted to do this, so that I can put this information out to our database. But as an actionable step, the censorship petition that we want to put out there, we want to get 1 million signatures in the next 30 days, and it'll be available from the time when you guys are watching this. It'll be available. But there's a message that I have before we go into those two things. There's a message that I have for anybody who is law enforcement or military, whether you're retired or active duty, it doesn't make any difference. I want you to hear this. And this is from somebody that's been in the military. So I'm prior military. I wasn't prior law enforcement, but I don't care whether you're prior military or prior law enforcement or active right now, or you're just somebody that believes in the US Constitution. I want you to remember the oath that we all took was to defend, to protect and defend the US Constitution against all enemies. That keyword all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we tend to think of enemies wearing a different type of headgear, or being of a different color, or being in a different part of the world, geographically displaced from the continental United States. But I'm here to tell you that the greatest enemy that we have ever faced, the greatest enemy that Americans have ever faced, the greatest enemy that any country has ever faced, the greatest enemy that the human species has ever faced, the greatest enemy that this planet will ever face is right now bearing down on us. And that enemy is an enemy of humanity. It's an enemy of the future of the human species. And I'm not talking metaphorically. I'm not trying to create some sensationalism here. This is not an exaggeration. This is exactly what's going to happen if they are allowed to introduce RNA vaccines, because our kids will never have kids. And if they do have kids, they will not be human. They will be something else. They will be adulterated. At the very least, they will be damaged, and they will be, the consequences of that human experimentation are just, you can't even fathom it. The other part is that it will be the ushering in, as far as I believe, often, Sarah, you tell me what your opinion is, but I believe it will be ushering in the next level of darkness, which will be the precursor of human extinction. And the people that are responsible for this atrocity right now, either they're just too stupid to understand the implications, even for their own progeny, or they have already separated themselves out because they will not be getting these vaccines. They will not have they will not be suffering from a generational, and we're talking much more than a miasmatic type sequela. I'm talking about from a genetic code adulteration aspect, actually morphologically changing the structure of what makes us humans. And the message that I have for all the military and all the law enforcement, either active or retired, and I don't care what nation you're in, because you're all in the same boat. You were all willing to die for your countries, or to die to help protect those that are underserved, that could be vulnerable. So your agendas as military and as police, as law enforcement, has always been the same: to protect and serve, right? To help those that are not able to take care of themselves. And I always feel a little self-conscious when I think I don't include firemen in there, But, you know, firemen do the same thing. They risk their lives, but they're not in law enforcement and they're not in the military. But anybody who has sacrificed their life or potentially put their life on the line to help somebody else, I want you to remember why you did it. I want you to remember what the purpose was. And I want you to understand that now, more than ever, humanity needs somebody to stand up for them, to shout the battle cry and to rise up. And every one of you is one of those individuals. You need to remember your responsibility. Remember that if you take off your military uniform or your law enforcement uniform, you are just as susceptible as anybody else that you have been told to do, you know, to take an order against. If they've ordered you to arrest somebody, they've ordered you to shoot somebody, they've ordered you to detain someone. If you didn't have that uniform, you are going to be susceptible to the same thing. Already in California, a law enforcement officer who was playing with his daughter at a park, I believe he may have been retired, playing with his daughter at the park, was arrested. Now tell me something. What makes you different than the rest of us? The uniform. And I've heard people already, we've got over almost 10,000 people that have contacted us directly that are law enforcement and military saying that they want to help. And they will take off their uniforms. No, I don't want you to take off your uniforms. That is the last thing I want you to do. I want you to retain your uniforms. I want you to wear your uniforms. And I want you to hear the message that, I can't remember the Chief Justice. He was just interviewing me for the International Tribunal, but he told a story about a dictator from Romania. I'm not going to give the story away. When you go to sign this petition, you'll see a video, and basically you will hear what he said. But this has already happened. And Sarah, because I can't remember, I'm just going to tell this summary of the story. The Romanian dictator there was uprising. He ordered the police to quell the uprising on day one. The police began to quell the uprising. On day two, the police joined the uprising.
Yeah.
They joined the protest. On day three, he ordered the military to quash the police and the uprising. On day 4, the military joined the uprising. On day 5, they drug him out into the public, gave him a 5-minute trial, and shot him in the head.
Wow.
Now, the point that I'm making here is that the power that these bastards, and I say that affectionately, these bastards get is only from what they tell you as in the military or the law enforcement to do. Yeah. I want you to remember that the consequence to you will be your children. What are they going to suffer? How are you going to be able to look at your children and tell them 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and explain to them why they can't have kids? How are you going to do that if you even have children then? Even if you're alive then? I don't want you to take off your uniform. I want you to remember what you're hearing right now, and I want you to look to your right and look to your left, look to the soldier to your right, look to the law enforcement officer to your left, and I want you to talk to them and give them the same message. I want you to direct them so that they can understand really what's going on. I want you to empower them with knowledge so that they no longer victimize others, and more importantly, they don't victimize themselves, and they don't allow their future families to be victimized. This is the most important thing we can do so that we can get everyone aware. Once you become aware, once you become empowered with knowledge, guys, nobody can victimize you anymore. And that's all we're asking, because this can be done completely peacefully. Because if somebody gives an illegal order to do this or do that, remember, as law enforcement, especially as military, you follow an illegal order, you have committed a war crime. And soldiers, remember that in the United States, you were not trained to raise arms against the civilian population of any nation. When we go into these other countries, we do it under police action. Well, now you're going to do a police action against your own neighbors and your own family. Guys, if something's inside you saying this doesn't seem right, it's because it's not right. Listen to that voice, that intuition, that sixth sense, that fire in your gut, that uncomfortable, queasy feeling. That is the Creator communicating with you, telling you this is not right. Heed those words. Talk to the guy on your right, talk to the guy on your left. Help them to understand. Don't take off your uniform. And remember, when that order is given, that illegal order is given, stand your ground, refuse. Because we depend on you. Every person that was a soldier, that was law enforcement, depends on those that are active. And everybody depends on those that are retired or those that are active. If you're retired, your mission is not over. Your oath did not go away. Just like the U.S. Constitution is not a document of convenience. It is a document that was designed to deal with periods of high stress, during periods of turmoil. And this is exactly what happened 225 years, 235, 245 years ago in 1776. My brain can't do the math. Okay, that's about 245 years ago. The Constitution was formed during the most extreme, dire situations. Now, when we have a dire situation, we're just supposed to say, well, we'll talk about it afterwards? No. This is the time that we need to look at the Constitution. Our forefathers knew. They knew what was going to happen. That's why they gave us the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom to associate, freedom to assemble. They're trying to get us away from that. They're saying we cannot assemble. Facebook is dismantling anybody that tries to organize to assemble. They're trying to take away our free speech. Videos hitting 6, 7, 9. The first video did 9.1 million views in 6 days, and they took that off. Personal videos that we put out that hit 1 million within 2 or 3 days, the COVID-19 conspiracy, parts 3, part 4, part 5. YouTube took them down. Facebook took them down. Video after video has been taken down. But here's the thing. Just like you said, Sarah, in the beginning, right? By them taking this information down, by them censoring certain terms, they're just accentuating the need for the people to see this. This is actually a blessing again. They're highlighting the importance of this stuff. To me, if somebody's censoring something, it's no different than burning books. They don't want this information out. Why? That's the question you have to ask. Why don't they want this information out? And that's what you as law enforcement and military need to ask yourself. Why? Stand your ground, and together, there's nobody that can take us. Remember that you were supposed to protect those that are underserved, protect those that are weak. Just remember that part. Follow your gut and rise to the occasion.
Amen. I mean, there's no higher secular authority than the Constitution, right? And what we're seeing is we literally have individuals like Bill Gates, who's right now the primary funder of the World Health Organization, who's calling the shots. Absolutely no medical background, not appointed, not elected. And that's whose orders enforced law enforcement is following. And so if one understands that, it's so clear. And you have the Constitution, this beautiful document that was, born of blood and heart and love. That is, and then there's a higher authority that validates even that. And that's what we're asking people to do, is be aware that you can be part of the healing of this planet. You can be a spiritual force on this planet versus the darkness that is literally destroying the basis for our humanity. So I so thank you for articulating that in a clear way. So how do law enforcement and former military, how do they, embrace this? How do they get guidance with making this right decision?
Well, one thing they can do is our petition, and I guess we can get into this part right now. Yeah. The petition, if you go to askdrbuttar.com, askdrbuttar.com/sign, SIGN, like to sign something. So askdrbuttar.com/sign. If they go there, there'll be 2 questions. It'll say, I want to sign the petition and get involved, or I just want to sign the petition. Click whichever one. But if you want to get involved, especially if you're law enforcement or you're an attorney, to help to deal with those lawsuits that are going to come when people are going to defy these orders, stay-at-home orders. If you want to be involved with this, then click on the one that says, I want to get involved, and fill in that information. And we will then contact you. I know there's a lot of people that are waiting for us to contact. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but just get your information to us, because as we get organized, and then there will be things that we can all do. It's part and parcel of being aware of that you are not alone. We've got over 9,300 people the last time I checked. Every time I checked, there's another few hundred people. The time before this, when I checked, it was over 6,000 people. And then 2 days later, I checked and we were over 9,000 people. So, I love the fact that there are so many people that understand the importance of this and their responsibility. But we need to get the message out, because there's so much censorship going. So just pass it forward to everybody that you know. And my goal is, and hopefully everybody's goal, Sarah, I know your goal, is get 1 million signatures on the censorship component, because that is part and parcel with the problem. Is they're preventing people from getting this information. Right before we got on here, Sarah, I had a cousin of mine from the UK who is very much on the left. All right. I'm more so on the right. She sends me a message. She said, I saw one of your videos, something that a news network put out. And she said, I watched it, and I'll just read to you what she said, because I thought it was pretty funny. Sure. And she says, let me see, pull this up here. She said, Nadine hangs on your every word. That's my niece. She says, I worry about you. Stay safe. These people want to keep things buried. And I know the more that they try to cover up, the louder you'll shout. So she knows me pretty well. She said, our love to you as always. And then, let's see. Yes, she said, John sent me the interviews that you did on some TV cable, I think it was. I sent this to some people and now it's disappeared from my phone, and every person I send it to, what's going on? Can you send me the copy? This is happening in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
People in Russia, people in Japan, they're hearing the messages. I'm getting video footage of people going out and you know, in public groups and standing together. And I'm getting these messages saying that your word's getting out. And I'm thinking that's fantastic. But I'm thinking there's all these different people. I saw something in Colorado. I'm thinking this is great. People are already starting to move. We haven't done anything. And then I saw somebody holding up a sign, fire Fauci, hire Buttar. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, you know, I have no interest in any of those types of positions. And I'm not a politician. I'm not running for office. Sarah, you're not running for office, the best I know. You're not, you don't have any agenda. Our agenda is simply to get this world back to where it's supposed to be. And guys, understand that this is a war on consciousness right now. This is not about vaccines. It's not about freedom. It's about the human race. It's literally a war on consciousness. So there was supposed to be something that occurred 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but there was supposed to be something that was going to be catastrophic in the US, and it was going to be one of these false flag things. I had been warned about it as far back as 2015, and it was supposed to happen in 2019. Okay. That's one reason I moved out of the US in 2016 to prepare for it. In 2019, nothing happened. You know, I still have a place overseas. My kids were here, and then I got a call about 3 weeks ago, that Sunday. It was supposed to happen on that Sunday. I got a call on that Thursday, and I said, get out, or that Thursday, get out now. Guy felt very, very bad about himself because he said, you know, this is going to cause a lot of lives and it's going to be blamed on another country, but, you know, it's us. And he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in praying. And he said, there's nothing left. This is inevitable. The only thing left for us is God. And so I called Bruce Lipton within an hour. Bruce, myself, and Nia Peoples, we did a video. And that video was about, it was a funny video. We laughed in the beginning, we laughed in the end. We sent the video out. It got everywhere. Surprisingly, it was censored too. YouTube didn't censor it and Facebook didn't censor it, but it was censored by the email bodies. And the message was just this: hold love and gratitude and compassion in your heart for people of the world, for people on the other side of the planet. Yeah. And ask source energy to help us during this period of transition, because this is an evolutionary period for mankind. And as with all evolution, it's painful, it's difficult, it's chaotic. And we know that people are scared, but on the other side, it's an incredible world. It is in a world that is fair, where resources are free. World is a world of abundance. And that's what we need to remember. And that message was a message that I wanted to get out at that time. And that's what I believe changed that thing from not occurring. Consciously, if we can focus in intention, what is the difference between intention and prayer? Nothing. There's no religious connotation to it. That's the only thing. But if we as a group hold love, gratitude, and compassion and ask for support during this period of transition, during this period of evolution, to allow the new to come in, we can change. I believe that we could shift the rotational grid of the planet if we wanted to, because that is one thing that they don't have power over us. I have the 7 toxicity philosophy. They've hit us on every one of these toxicities: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. First is heavy metals. Second, persistent organic pollutants. Third is the opportunistics, the bacteria, viruses. That's what COVID is. Fourth is energetics. That's our new technology that's being rolled out. Fifth is emotional, psychological. This is the fear mongering. Hide inside your house. Sixth is foods, not what we eat, but what we do to the foods: the homogenization, pasteurization, irradiation, genetic modification. They've been doing this with the glyphosates. They've been doing this with all the genetic modified foods. They've hit us on all 6, preparing us for this time. It's the 7th one. The 7th one is a spiritual toxicity. They did not expect mankind to rise to that occasion. And that's where they fell short. And this is a spiritual war. This is a war on consciousness. And so for the military and for the law enforcement, I commend you guys for putting your lives on the line, but remember, your lives on the line to protect those that are underserved. I just want to, Sarah, if you allow me to, I'm just going to say 2 names that just came across my desk. We know that Sheriff Arapo and Sheriff Mack are out there. We know that the sheriffs, they stand as the highest authority, the highest constitutionally granted authority as law enforcement in the United States. But there were two other sheriffs, Sheriff Douglas Schuster from Mojave County in Nevada, and the other one is Sheriff Mark Lamb from Pinal County, Nevada. So for Sheriff Schuster and Sheriff Lamb, you guys are heroes. You stood up and you defied the governor's order for stay at home. You said you are not going to detain people and give them citations for violating the stay at home order. And every other sheriff out there, take heed. Listen to these heroes that are setting the precedent, setting the example. This is not Nazi Germany. We are not going to ask for people to produce their papers to show that they have authority to be traveling. And I just wanted to mention those two names because these guys are standing out there, and every sheriff, every law enforcement, every military guy standing up there is a hero. Chair, I keep on saying this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I keep on saying it, but there's this one other thought that came to my mind that I want to mention. My friends from overseas over the last 8 years have told me over and over again, I hope you Americans understand what's at stake. I hope you Americans never give up your guns. I hope you Americans understand that if the United States falls, so does the rest of the world, because we are the last stand. We are the last front, because no other nation has a public militia that is as well armed as we are. And that's the reason that they've been trying to take away our guns for the last 10 years or so, because they want to disarm the public, because then there's no resistance. So now is a time, lock and load. The purpose of being strong is not to fight. The purpose to be strong is to ensure peace. And if we are strong and we are armed and we are able to and know how to fight, that ensures peace, because they're not going to come against us, especially if they know that there's a chance of 75% of the people that they give the orders to fight going to turn against them. Just like that Chief Justice told me the story in Romania, that day one, the law enforcement joins the resistance, the public outcrying, and the day 3, day 4, the military joins, the same thing. They're going to think twice about it. So just remember, they only get their power from as much power as you give them.
Sure. Great. And another way, that they can fight, is to use Stand for Health Freedom. It's a nonprofit, right, that we created so that people could basically have zero barriers to accessing their lawmakers, the decision makers that they have, and basically sending a direct message. We saw this have great impact in places like New Jersey, where they were trying to roll in a California-style stripping of medical religious exemption. And it's just a very easy, powerful tool to add to what you're already saying, which is that together, we have the ability to have a huge impact. The spiritual warfare concept, or the ability for us to just envision a beautiful future together, to me is just, it's beautiful, So there's the fearlessness, there's staying strong and defending, our loved ones, and there's the other side of it, which is that we can, really do beautiful things here, so thank you.
Well, this planet was meant to be a place of great abundance, Sarah. We know that. It has abundance, and yet we've oppressed people throughout the centuries, if you will. If you start looking at how there's division that's been promoted, right? It's black against white, or it's Democrat against Republican, it's Jew against Muslim, it's tall against short, it's man against woman. It's constant division, and we have to understand that we are a planetary species, and we are all connected. We all come from the same place, and we're all going to go back to the same place, no matter what we've been taught in our religious classes of the concepts of heaven or hell or afterlife, whatever it is. These are all man-made concepts. We're all born, we all go back. And whatever you believe is going to happen in the afterlife, or you get segregated into the right side or left side or whatever, the point is we all go back to the same clearinghouse, okay? At least I think people can agree upon that. And when we start to recognize that there's more similarities between us than there are dissimilarities, and these dissimilarities have been accentuated by somebody with an agenda, then we start to look at and observe what really the truth is. And the truth is that when you look out at a field, I'm looking at a field right there, and just look at the number of blades of grass in that field. I mean, you can't count them. And then how many fields are there in the world? And then you start looking at the number of leaves on a tree. You can't count those. And then you look at the number of trees out there, right, on the planet, or the number of grains of sand in a beach, and how many beaches are there all throughout the world. So you start realizing that God is a God of abundance. The Creator is a creator of abundance. But we have been made to believe that there's limited resources. There's technology out there that'll make cars run on water, the cars run on just sunlight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what we need to remember, the control aspect, right? This is all coming to a head right now. It's all about misinformation, the campaign of misinformation and diversion and distraction. It's time for all that to go away. And this is what this opportunity is allowing us as a global citizenry. We are now being shown what the true colors are, and it's giving us the opportunity to rise and make the world a better place for every one of us.
Beautiful. I so agree. In fact, chapter 3 of my book, Regenerate, is all about free energy. Starting with the body, can extract energy from the quantum vacuum, sunlight, melanin, chlorophyll, water, but it really extends out to free energy technologies, which I think will, liberate us profoundly from scarcity mentality. So you're running a event coming up that I'd love for people to know more about. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sir. Thank you for that. I totally forgot to mention that. Yeah. So Advanced Medicine Conference. It's the second annual one. The first one we did in Pasadena last year. We had people from all over the world that came. And this year it's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Advanced Medicine Conference, I know it sounds like it's a medical conference. It's not. It's for everyone. It's actually showing them that there is a better way that medicine should be practiced. And so we have doctors and non-physicians that are going to be giving lectures there. And Dr. Bruce Lipton is supposed to be here. He's actually in New Zealand right now. He's just trying to figure out how he's going to get over because of the restrictions of flights. We have doctors and other well-known people that are going to be presenting. And Sarah, you and I had not connected, but next year I hope that you would consider coming and giving a lecture there.
Sure, it'd be an honor.
That'd be awesome. And we are going, it's May 23rd, May 24th, and the morning of May 25th, the workshops. The venue is not wanting to cancel, and they've contacted us, and I said, I don't want to cancel. So they're right on board. We're not canceling. We've heard that North Carolina may try to impose the restriction of no more than 50 people. It doesn't matter what they say. I don't give a crap.
Bring your constitution.
Yeah, we're going to be there. Everybody's going to be there. And our goal is we've decided to go ahead and stream it, and the cost is going to be the same. However, if you come physically, and we want you to let us know, because we only have a capacity of probably about 1,200 people. But if you come in person, you're going to get a check written out right there and then for half the cost. Plus you will get the videos, the downloads. Once after the event is there, you will get those for free if you attend in person. And I don't care. In fact, one of the organizers was saying, well, Dr. Buttar, they could start arresting people. And I said, I don't care. I'm going to be there. And I've got a lot of people that are coming. They don't care about that. And this organizer looked at me for a second, and then he had a huge smile on his face. He goes, let's do it. Yeah. And so that was, that's what people need to know, is that you are not alone. There's so many people that are going to be of like-mindedness. You just need to voice it. The Advanced Medicine Conference is going to give an opportunity for people to really understand some of the more advanced concepts that are from a human physiology standpoint and implementation in how you can actually intervene. It's going to be talking a lot about map of the consciousness and the map of consciousness, and all sorts of different things are going to be covered in there. So some of the healers there are non-medical, but their treatment modalities are incredible. You guys, if you know Bruce Lipton, you already know that he's the guy of biology of belief. And Dr. Lipton has become a very good friend. So we're going to be talking about all these different aspects. One of the things, I'll give you an example of one of the lecturers. He's a radiation oncologist, from Washington University School of Medicine, one of the top medical schools in the country. A radiation oncologist, a very close friend of mine for over 20 years. Sarah, you want to take a guess what he's going to be lecturing on?
Oh my. Well, I don't know. I really, what?
Essential oils.
Oh, well, I wouldn't have guessed that. So that's
exactly.
Great.
See, radiation. So it's showing evolved thought processes from some of the top doctors, but they have realized that what they're doing is not the right thing. And he's been doing essential. I mean, that's what he wanted to talk about. He goes, man, what I'm doing with essential oils, I'm so excited about. So this is the point that I'm making. That's why it's called advanced medicine. And I hope that you come, and I hope that you show your presence there, because from an energetic basis, that's what the world needs to see. The best thing that we can happen is they have a lot of people that come that try to stop the convention from happening, the conference from happening, because that shows, again, it's going to have a lot of light on it. It's going to show civil disobedience. I'm not a person that's violent. I'm not a person that likes to fight, but don't confuse. And this is what one of my masters in martial arts used to say, people sometimes confuse the desire not to fight and the desire to be peaceful. They sometimes confuse that with the inability to fight. And so there's a big difference between the inability to fight and the choice of not fighting. I choose not to fight. Sarah, you choose not to fight. And many people choose not to fight. But that does not mean that we don't know how to fight. And so that is the warning to the opposition. And I hope that you guys can join us at the Advanced Medicine Conference in Charlotte. You can go to advancedmedicineconference.com and you can register there. And once you register, there's no distinction between live stream or being there in person. But once you register, then you'll get some information within the next 3 days as to whether you're going to be coming live or whether you're going to do live stream. So it's less than 25 days away or 25 days away. So register, and I would appreciate you, Sarah, reminding me of that so we can get that information out.
Sounds great. Great. The last thing I would like to just, remind people is that if they want to get information related to the narrative that's dominating related to COVID, go to questioningcovid.com. My wife and I, Kelly Brogan, we've curated a number of videos and articles that help people understand like what essentially is the psychological operation running to try to keep us in our homes cowering versus the things that you're doing to get people aware of the true agenda and empowering them to make positive decisions and take back their civil liberties.
I appreciate that, Sarah. In fact, we were getting our COVID-19 conspiracy question mark videos that have been taken down, and we've got them up on the website. The last one, 7 is supposed to be released early this week, but we are going to actually make them available to everybody to download on their own smart devices and pass it around. And I'll send you a Dropbox if you want, and you can put those videos up on your site too. So because we want to saturate everywhere that people have this information. And I think the reason they went viral was not because they were done very professionally. I mean, it was basically me with this background and late at night. And so, I don't even know half the stuff that I'm doing, but because I'm not technically aware of some of this software, but the information the question was just asked, I asked the question and then I tried to answer it based on science, and I showed the actual studies. And I think that's why they went viral, because I just asked a question and the answer is inevitable where you get to. So if you want to put those up there at your site, and I just want everybody to have access to this. And before I forget, you have a summit coming up that I guess I was just recently asked to give a presentation on an online summit. So can we talk about that too, so that people know from a resource standpoint?
Thank you. It's basically the second iteration of the 5gsummit.com. So the 5gsummit.com. And it's a means to both raise awareness about science, because we have PhDs and every possible credentialed speaker on it, from MDs to public policy, master's degrees, to try to get people to understand what the agendas are, the real harms are, as well as we have an action tool, which is going to enable them to make direct contact again with decision makers in their region to try to push back against this highly unethical rollout. So that event's happening June 1st, and it's free, and it's something that we'd love to help people get out there, because right now it's the most censored topic, as you know. And thank you for participating, because you have such a huge amount to contribute to this topic.
Thank you, Sarah. And I appreciate you reaching out and us making this connection, because one, I think that we're speaking the identical language. We believe the same things. And I think that this is exactly where we're supposed to be. I had one of the guys that interviewed me, Mark Bell, who's a bodybuilder, fitness guy, and he had about 500,000 people on his Instagram account. And he interviewed me, and he got some serious backlash. And he had about 40,000 people that unsubscribed, and a lot of people attacked him. And he started this thing, which was hilarious. He said, "Race to 0 subscribers." Okay? And he basically said, "I don't give a crap what you believe or what you think. This is the truth. And if you can't handle the truth, then get the hell off my list." And, it came down to a certain point and then it stopped and then started climbing back up. And now I think he's actually exceeded his numbers.
Wow.
And so, it's at this time, everyone needs to reach inside and see what motivates you. If it's your children, which is what my motivation is, some people don't have children, it's their dog or whatever, I'm just being facetious now, whatever motivates you, and understand that this is a war on consciousness. And just imagine 30 years from now, and especially for law enforcement and military, okay, just imagine your grandkids saying that my grandfather or my grandmother or my great aunt or my great uncle was involved with that fight that allowed us to continue as humanity, as opposed to that was the beginning of the extinction of the human race.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. This is amazing, and just so happy that people know about your work. And let's continue to join forces and really create that beautiful world we know we can make happen.
I appreciate that, sir. And I'm going to probably get your link so that when people come to sign the form, then they can have that resource. We'll just take that link and put it on the page so that they have the same place they can sign for the petition. Perfect. They'll still have they can watch the video for the message for law enforcement. Because I want them to see that message is a message on censorship with Ty. And we'll have the link so that everybody coming there can then go ahead and utilize that resource that you've created. It's so easy. I did that myself. I couldn't believe how easy it was. Perfect. You just type in your zip code and boom, everything comes up and you send the information. It's so easy. It makes it, you don't have to look up anybody's number or phone address or names or anything. You don't have to know any of that stuff. It's really awesome. I don't know how you did it, but that's fantastic.
Thank you. Well, we'll do the same. So thank you so much. And just look forward to really raising awareness. And I think we're starting to become a collective here. People are starting to wake up.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.